I was 6 when I won my first crown, Little Miss Texas Sunshine. I remember the weight of the sash, the blinding flashes, my mother crying in the audience. I didn't understand her tears then. I thought winning made people happy. Looking back, I wonder if she already sensed what this would become. If those were tears of joy, or something darker, a premonition of the path we were about to walk down. That's how it started. Just once, my mother said, just to see. Someone at church suggested it. You have such a pretty daughter. She should compete. My mum resisted at first. Pageants were expensive, time-consuming, for those mothers chasing their own dreams. But 1 crown became 5. 5 became 20. By 10, I'd competed in over 60, across Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. The transformation happened gradually, then all at once. Our living room turned into a practice space. Mirrors covered one wall, reflecting back a version of me that was always being perfected, never quite good enough. Stage lights hung in the corner, casting harsh shadows that made me look older than my years. The coffee table vanished, replaced by a portable runway. Family dinners became business meetings. Conversations revolved around entry fees, dress costs, coaching sessions. My parents argued late at night about money, about whether this was good for me, about whether we were making the right choices. But they always ended the same. She has potential. We've invested too much to quit now. I learned to sleep in the car during the long drives to competitions, waking up just in time to paste on a smile. I did homework in hotel rooms under fluorescent lights. My textbooks spread across beds that smelled like industrial detergent. I learned to curl my own hair when Mom was overwhelmed with coordinating schedules and managing finances. So professional for her age, people said. And I had to be. I smiled on command. Not a real smile, but the kind judges wanted. Bright, confident, full of personality. The kind that said I was special, that I deserved to win. I walked with perfect posture, shoulders back, chin up, even when my feet ached in heels too tight for my growing feet. I turned on cue, knowing exactly how many steps to take before the pivot. I memorized answers, like I want to help children, and my family means everything, until they rolled off my tongue like lines in a play. They sounded natural. That was the trick, to make the performance invisible, to seem effortlessly perfect. I knew my measurements better than my multiplication tables. I could recite my dress size, my shoe size, my height to the 1/4 inch. I could read a judge's preference in seconds. Natural or glam, sweet or sassy, girl next door or sophisticated. The spray tans itched for hours afterward, leaving orange stains on my sheets. Fake lashes made my eyes water and gave me headaches. Tight dresses restricted my breathing, making it hard to take full breaths. The corset-style backs left red marks that took days to fade. Swimsuit competitions left me feeling exposed in ways I couldn't name, ways that made my skin crawl, even though everyone said it was normal, that this was just part of the competition. But I never complained. Good girls don't complain. Good girls smile through discomfort. Good girls are grateful for opportunities. That's what I was told, over and over, until I believed it. Until complaining felt like betrayal. Of my mother, of the investment, of myself. By 10, I was in the top tier of junior competitors. Other moms asked mine for advice on routines, on dresses, on makeup techniques. Other girls copied my walk, trying to capture that elusive quality judges called presence. The pageant circuit became my world. There were stage mothers with identical fake smiles, hopeful daughters with rehearsed personalities, judges with clipboards and inscrutable expressions, and always at the edges, men with expensive cameras offering free shoots to build your portfolio, women with embossed business cards promising industry connections and the next level. We dismissed them. Part of the business, Mom said. Just people trying to make a quick buck. We were smarter than that. We were careful. We did our research. We only worked with legitimate professionals. What we didn't know, some weren't networking. They were hunting. They were patient. They watched. They waited. They identified vulnerable families, ambitious mothers, talented daughters. They positioned themselves as gatekeepers to success. And we believed them because we wanted to believe them. because ambition made us blind. By 11, I felt hollow, like I was performing a version of myself, not living as me. Friendships faded. Classmates called me stuck up, said I thought I was better than them. I didn't think that. I was just never there. I missed birthdays, sleepovers, school plays, soccer games, all the normal things that make childhood memorable. There was always another pageant, another crown to win, another goal to reach, national title by 12. That's when everything changes, they said. That's when the real opportunities come. The pressure was invisible but constant, like water slowly eroding stone. I felt it in every meal, my mother's watchful eyes calculating calories. In every rehearsal, never quite perfect, always room for improvement. In every glance in the mirror, too much of this, not enough of that. But I kept smiling, kept winning, kept being special. Because what choice did I have? This was my life, my normal, my identity. And making my mother happy, seeing that proud look in her eyes when I won, felt like the most important thing in the world. Until Susan Carmichael walked into our lives and everything changed. Forever. She approached. After I placed third at Miss Junior Texas, "A disappointment," Mom muttered, her lips pressed thin with frustration. We'd expected first, maybe second. Third felt like failure. Susan appeared at that exact moment, like she'd been waiting for it. She looked like she belonged in this world. Designer bag, perfectly tailored suit, calm confidence, a handshake that felt important, substantial. Her nails were manicured, her smile practiced, but warm. "I'm Susan Carmichael, Elite Youth Management. I've been watching your daughter for several competitions now. She has star quality, not just pretty, but presence. Real presence, the kind you can't teach." My mother straightened, her disappointment momentarily forgotten. Someone professional had noticed me. Not a stage mom with an opinion, but someone with credentials. Someone who mattered. Susan spoke of modeling contracts, acting opportunities, real careers, not just crowns that would sit in a bedroom collecting dust. She talked about girls she had managed who were now on television, in magazines, walking runways in New York and Paris. She made it sound achievable, natural, like the next logical step for someone with my potential. When Mom asked about logistics, Susan had answers for everything. Training facilities in Dallas, connections with top photographers, networking events with industry professionals. For her serious clients, she offered residential sessions, immersive weekends, or weeks where girls could focus entirely on their craft. Like Olympic athletes, she said, like dancers at Juilliard. Other girls have done it and thrived. It's how stars are made. Mom hesitated. Dallas was 2 hours away. I was only 11. But Susan made it sound normal, professional, safe. She had a registered business, a professional website, testimonials from satisfied parents. Everything looked legitimate. More than legitimate, prestigious. She suggested a trial weekend. No pressure, no commitment, just exploration. A chance to see if this was the right fit. She gave Mom a business card with the company logo embossed in gold foil. And when Mom wasn't looking, she slipped me a smaller one with just a phone number. "If you ever want to talk about your career, call me anytime," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "I only work with girls who really want this. Girls who are serious. I can tell you're serious, Brittany." That night, alone in my room, I held the card and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the hollow hope of winning another crown, but real hope. Hope for something different, something bigger. Someone who saw me as more than a pageant girl. Someone who believed I could be a star. I called her the next day, from school, during lunch, hiding in a bathroom stall so no one would overhear. Just to ask questions, I told myself. Just to learn more. Susan sounded delighted to hear from me. Her voice was warm, encouraging, like I was already special to her. "You're going to be a star, Brittany. I can see it. You have something rare. You're not like the other girls. You're special." That word again. Special. It wrapped around me like a blanket. Warm and comforting and dangerous. Over the next weeks, she stayed in touch. Texts, calls. Never pushy. Always affirming. She sent success stories of other girls she had worked with. She asked about my dreams, my goals, what I wanted from my career. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Like I mattered as a person, not just as a performer. Meanwhile, Mom checked her credentials. Registered business with the Better Business Bureau. Professional website with portfolio photos. Client testimonials that all sounded genuine. Susan even provided references. Other mothers who praised her professionalism, her dedication, her results. Everything looked legitimate. More than legitimate, impressive. "Your mom loves you," she'd say during our phone calls, which had become daily. "But she doesn't understand this world like I do. She doesn't know how competitive it is, how mature you need to be. She's holding you back without meaning to." I started telling Susan things I couldn't tell anyone else. How tired I was of pageants, how trapped I felt, how I wanted something different, but didn't know what. She listened without judgment. She validated my feelings. For the first time in years, I felt heard, understood, like someone was on my side. Then came Michael, the exclusive photographer who only worked with elite talent. He had shot campaigns for major brands. His work had appeared in Vogue, but he was selective, Susan said. Very selective. And he could only meet on a Wednesday. One day of school versus an opportunity that could change your life, Susan said when my mother hesitated. Michael doesn't give second chances. If Brittany isn't serious about this, I need to know now, Mom agreed, reluctantly. The pressure of now or never overcame her instinct to say no. Wednesday morning, Susan picked me up from school. I waved goodbye to my mother, bag packed like always, excited for another step toward my new career. We stopped at a mall first. The outfits Susan chose were different from what we'd worn before. Too revealing, too adult. I was 11, still flat-chested, still childlike despite the makeup and hair. These clothes made me look like I was playing dress-up in my older sister's closet. Uncomfortable dress-up. When I hesitated, Susan laughed gently, dismissively. "You're not 6 anymore, sweetie. The industry needs to see you can do mature work. Trust me, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what sells. Do you want to stay a little pageant girl forever? Or do you want a real career?" The question felt like an accusation, a test. Stay small and safe, or grow up and be brave. I wanted to be brave. At Michael's studio, the session started normally. Headshots, portfolio shots, different poses and expressions. Then he asked me to change into one of those mall outfits. In the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked wrong. Too old, too exposed, too much like someone I wasn't. But when I voiced discomfort, Susan shut it down immediately. "This is fashion, Brittany. Real fashion, not pageant glitz. If you want a real career, you need to be comfortable with this. Every model does shoots like this. Do you think you're better than them? More special? Or are you just being immature?" Guilt crashed over me like a wave. Maybe I was being immature. Maybe I didn't understand how the real industry worked. Maybe this was normal, and I was the problem. So I did what I'd been trained to do for 5 years. I smiled. I posed. I obeyed. Afterward, Michael showed Susan some of the shots on his camera. They murmured approvingly. Then Michael mentioned a sponsor, Richard. "Just a dinner," he said. "A conversation. Someone who invested in young talent. Someone who could fast-track my career with one phone call." Susan nodded enthusiastically. "This is how the industry works, Brittany. It's all about connections. You should feel honored that Michael thinks you're ready for this level." I didn't want to go. Something in my stomach twisted. But I didn't know how to say no. Not to Susan, who had invested so much in me. Not to Michael, who had taken time from his busy schedule. Not to this invisible sponsor, who apparently held my future in his hands. In Richard's penthouse apartment, Susan left us alone for 20 minutes to let you two talk. He offered me wine, sat too close on the leather couch. His hand on my knee felt heavy, wrong. He said I was rare, that I had potential most girls don't have, that he could open doors for me. When he touched me, my body froze. Every muscle locked. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't scream. I disappeared into myself, becoming a witness to something happening, to someone who couldn't be me. This couldn't be happening to me. When Susan returned, she beamed. "Richard wants to invest in you. He's very impressed. Your career is taking off, Brittany. Everything we've worked for is coming together." I stared at the floor, numb, disconnected from my body. This was an opportunity. This wasn't a career move. This wasn't what I had dreamed about during those late-night phone calls with Susan. This was the end of my childhood, and I had walked into it willingly, believing it was the beginning of something better. The dinner with Richard was not just dinner. It was the beginning of something horrifying that would consume the next 3 years of my life. Over those years, Susan systematically groomed me and sold access to me to wealthy men. She called them sponsors. They were wealthy businessmen, lawyers, professionals, who paid her significant amounts of money to spend time alone with me. Susan controlled every aspect of my life. What I wore, what I ate, where I went, who I saw, what I said. She isolated me from my family, telling me they didn't understand the industry, that they would hold me back, that they were jealous of my success. She told me I was special, that this was how stars were made, that I should feel grateful for these opportunities that other girls would kill for. There were photo shoots that made me uncomfortable, where I was asked to pose in ways that felt wrong. Private dinners with men 3 times my age who looked at me in ways that made my skin crawl. Weekend trips to Dallas that my mother thought were training sessions, but were actually overnight stays with sponsors. Hotel rooms where terrible things happened. Things I couldn't name then. Things I struggle to name now. Things that separated me from my body, from myself, from any sense of safety or control. Each time, Susan convinced me this was normal. This was the price of success. This was what girls like me had to do if we wanted to make it in the industry. She had answers for every doubt. Do you think you're special enough to skip the hard parts? Other girls have done this, and they're fine. If you tell anyone, they'll blame you. They'll say you wanted this. I was 11, then 12, then 13. My childhood disappeared. I became numb, disconnected. I learned to dissociate, to be somewhere else in my mind when unbearable things were happening to my body. I perfected the art of being physically present while mentally absent. It was the only way I survived. My mother grew suspicious. I was losing weight, becoming skeletal, despite her efforts to make me eat. I was withdrawn, barely speaking during the rare times I was home. I avoided physical affection. I flinched when touched unexpectedly. I locked myself in my room and refused to come out for hours. When she tried to talk to me, I shut down completely. But Susan had prepared me for this. She taught me what to say. I'm fine, Mom. I'm just working hard. This is what I want. This is my dream. Why are you trying to stop me? The guilt worked every time. My mother backed off, not wanting to be the obstacle to my success. The exploitation network was sophisticated and terrifyingly organized. There were other girls. I saw them occasionally at certain events, recognized the same blank look in their eyes. Other managers, like Susan, all connected, all sharing information. A whole circuit of wealthy offenders who paid for access to young performers. They met at exclusive events, private parties in mansions, where we were passed around like party favors. They shared information on which girls were available, which managers were reliable, which events were safe from oversight. They were lawyers, businessmen, politicians, people with power and resources who knew how to avoid consequences. They paid in cash or through shell companies. They vetted each other. They had systems in place to ensure everyone's silence. It was a well-oiled machine of exploitation, and we were the fuel. Susan took videos and photos, lots of them. She used them to control me. If you tell anyone, she said, showing me images on her phone that made me want to die, I'll show these to your family, to the police, to your school. They'll think you wanted this. They'll think you're dirty. They'll blame you. I believed her. I was 13 years old, and I believed I was complicit in my own abuse, that I had chosen this path, that I was dirty and ruined, and could never tell anyone what was happening, because they would see the truth, that I was damaged goods, worthless, used up. When I was 14, one of the sponsors went too far. He hurt me badly enough that I couldn't hide it, couldn't pretend I was fine. I ended up in the emergency room with injuries I couldn't explain away. Susan panicked for the first time since I'd known her. She told the doctors I had fallen during a photo shoot, that I'd tripped over equipment. She coached me on what to say, standing outside my exam room, mouthing the words, "I fell. I was clumsy. It was an accident." And I said it. I repeated her lies because I was terrified of what would happen if I told the truth. Terrified of those photos being released. Terrified that people would blame me. Terrified that I would lose what little control I had left. But one nurse didn't believe the story. She had seen too many accidents that didn't add up. She reported her suspicions to Child Protective Services, citing the pattern of injuries documented in my medical records, the inconsistencies in my story, the fear in my eyes, that single act of courage, that one person who refused to look away when it was easier to accept the lie, set in motion the events that would eventually save my life. The social worker's name was Linda Hayes. She interviewed me 3 times over the course of 2 weeks. The first 2 times, I stuck to Susan's script perfectly. I was convincing. I had years of practice performing, years of saying what people wanted to hear with a smile on my face. I told her I was fine, that nothing was wrong, that people were overreacting. But Linda was persistent in a way I hadn't expected. She didn't push, but she didn't let go either. She told me she knew something was wrong, that she had seen situations like this before, that whatever was happening, it wasn't my fault, that she could help me, that I was brave, even when I felt like a coward. She said it over and over, like a mantra, like she was trying to reprogram my brain. On the 3rd interview, something inside me broke, or maybe it finally healed enough to break. I told her everything, about Susan, about the sponsors, about the exploitation, the hotels, the things I was forced to do, about the photos and videos Susan used to control me, about feeling trapped and dirty and convinced I had caused all of it. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, hyperventilated until a nurse had to help me calm down. I was terrified, terrified of Susan's threats, terrified of what my family would think, terrified that no one would believe me, terrified that even if they did believe me, they would still blame me. But Linda believed me, and she didn't blame me. She said the words I needed to hear. "This is not your fault. You are a child. The adults in your life failed to protect you. But I'm going to protect you now." The investigation moved quickly after that. Law enforcement got involved. Detectives who specialized in cases like mine. They searched Susan's house, her computer, her financial records, her phone records. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. Susan had been running this operation for over a decade. I wasn't the first victim. There were other girls, some as young as 8 years old, some who had aged out of the system and disappeared, trying to rebuild lives shattered beyond recognition. They found videos and photos of multiple girls over multiple years, financial transactions showing payments from the sponsors to Susan, carefully laundered through her management business, emails discussing which girls would work with which sponsors, text messages, coordinating meetups, negotiating prices, sharing information. A network of people involved in child exploitation spread across multiple states. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, undeniable. Susan was arrested at her home during a coordinated raid. So were several of the sponsors, caught at their offices, their homes, some at the airport trying to flee. The case made national news. My name was protected as a minor, but the details were horrifying enough that the story dominated headlines for weeks. People were shocked. How could this happen? How could no one notice? How could this network operate for so long? But people had noticed. As the investigation progressed, that became clear. Other parents had suspected something was wrong, but convinced themselves they were overreacting. Teachers had worried about my absences and withdrawn behavior, but assumed it was just teenage moodiness. Doctors had questioned injuries, but accepted explanations. Everyone had noticed signs, but no one had acted. Everyone had assumed someone else would handle it. Everyone had convinced themselves it couldn't be that bad. My family was devastated. My mother blamed herself, spiraling into a depression so deep she couldn't get out of bed for weeks. My father was angry at Susan, angry at himself for not protecting me, angry at the world for being a place where this could happen. My younger siblings didn't fully understand what had happened, but they knew it was bad. They knew our family was broken in ways that might never be fixed. I had to testify, multiple times, in front of judges, lawyers, juries, filled with strangers who stared at me like I was evidence rather than a person. I had to relive every detail. I had to describe things I wanted to forget, things I had tried so hard to dissociate from. I had to sit in the same room as Susan and the sponsors and answer questions about the worst moments of my life while they watched me, their faces carefully neutral. The defense attorneys tried to make me seem complicit, tried to suggest I had wanted this, that I had been a willing participant, that I had benefited from the arrangement. They pointed to the clothes Susan had bought me, the opportunities I had received, the fact that I had continued to go back. They tried to paint me as a manipulative teenager who had entrapped innocent men, but the evidence spoke for itself. I was a child. Susan was an adult in a position of trust. The sponsors were wealthy men who had paid significant money for access to a minor. There was no consent. There could be no consent. There was no ambiguity. This was exploitation. This was criminal. This was evil. Susan was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Several of the sponsors received similar sentences. Others took plea deals in exchange for testimony that helped dismantle the broader network, revealing connections that spread further than anyone had imagined. Other managers, other cities, hundreds of victims over decades. It felt like justice, but it didn't feel like healing. Justice and healing, I would learn, are not the same thing. After the trial ended, after the news cameras left, after the case closed, and everyone moved on with their lives, I fell apart completely. The adrenaline that had kept me functioning through months of investigation and court proceedings disappeared, and I was left with the full weight of trauma pressing down on me like a physical force. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD, major depression, and generalized anxiety disorder, clinical terms for what felt like drowning on dry land. I had nightmares every single night, vivid, horrifying recreations of things that had happened and things I feared might have happened. I woke up screaming, sheets soaked with sweat, unable to distinguish dreams from reality for several terrifying minutes. Panic attacks came multiple times a day, triggered by seemingly random things, certain smells, certain songs, certain tones of voice. My heart would race. I couldn't breathe. The world would spin. I would be convinced I was dying, that my heart was going to explode, that I was losing my mind. I couldn't be in crowded spaces without hyperventilating. I couldn't be touched without flinching violently. I couldn't look at myself in mirrors without seeing someone contaminated, ruined, unrecognizable. I felt like my body wasn't mine anymore, like it was something that had been used and damaged, and was now just dead weight I had to carry around. I showered multiple times a day, scrubbing my skin until it was raw, trying to feel clean. But I never felt clean. The dirt was on the inside, I thought. No amount of soap could reach it. I stopped going to school. I couldn't concentrate on anything. My brain was full of static and screaming. I couldn't be around other teenagers living normal lives, worrying about normal things. I felt like an alien, like I existed in a completely different reality than my peers. They worried about grades and crushes, and college applications, and what to wear to parties. I worried about whether I could survive another hour, another day. I started self-harming. It started small, scratching at my arms when the panic got too intense. Then it escalated. Cutting gave me something physical to focus on, something I could control when everything else felt out of control. The pain was mine. I chose it. It made sense in a way nothing else did. My parents found out when I passed out from blood loss. They were terrified. They got me into intensive therapy immediately. I was hospitalized twice for suicidal ideation. The first time I had a plan. I had written notes to my family. I was ready. A friend reported it to the school counselor, and I was taken to a psychiatric facility for 2 weeks. The second time, I had already started implementing the plan. My father found me and called 911. That hospitalization lasted a month. I was angry, furiously, destructively angry. Angry at Susan for destroying my childhood. Angry at the sponsors for being monsters. Angry at my mother for not protecting me, for not seeing what was happening, for caring more about my career than my safety. Angry at myself for not speaking up sooner, for not fighting back, for being weak and scared. Angry at the world for being a place where this could happen. The anger burned inside me, consuming everything good, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. My relationship with my mother deteriorated rapidly. I blamed her. I knew it wasn't entirely fair. Susan had been manipulative. The situation had been carefully constructed to avoid detection, but I couldn't help it. She was supposed to protect me. She was supposed to be the adult. She was supposed to keep me safe. And she hadn't. We barely spoke for 2 years. When we did, we fought viciously, saying things we couldn't take back. I tried to numb the pain in various ways. I experimented with substances, alcohol, pills, anything to make the screaming in my head stop for a few hours. I engaged in risky behaviors, putting myself in dangerous situations with dangerous people. Like I was trying to prove I had already survived the worst, so nothing else could hurt me. I pushed away anyone who tried to help me, convinced I was toxic, that anyone who got close to me would be contaminated by my brokenness. I was self-destructive and reckless. Part of me didn't believe I deserved to be alive. But there were people who didn't give up on me, even when I gave up on myself. Linda, the social worker who had first believed me, checked in regularly. She showed up at the hospital when I was admitted. She came to my house when I wouldn't leave my room. She connected me with a therapist who specialized in trauma, Dr. Maria Martinez, who became the person who saved my life. Dr. Martinez didn't try to rush my healing. She didn't expect me to be grateful for surviving. She didn't tell me to move on or be strong. She let me be angry. She let me grieve. She validated my pain while also gently helping me develop coping skills, breathing techniques for the panic attacks, grounding exercises for the dissociation, healthier ways to manage the overwhelming emotions that threatened to drown me daily. It was slow. Painfully, impossibly slow. There were setbacks constantly. Some days I made small progress, and other days I regressed completely. But gradually, very gradually, I started to stabilize. The nightmares became less frequent, from every night to most nights to some nights. The panic attacks became less severe, from multiple times a day to once a week. I learned to recognize my triggers. I learned to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. I started a medication regimen that helped with the depression and anxiety. I resisted at first. I didn't want to be medicated, didn't want to be dependent on pills, didn't want to admit I needed chemical help to function. But it made a difference. It took the edge off the panic. It lifted the fog of depression just enough that I could see a path forward. It gave me enough stability to do the harder work of actually processing trauma. Around age 16, I started really processing what had happened, not just surviving it day to day, but actually working through it in therapy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, confronting the memories instead of avoiding them, acknowledging the loss of my childhood, grieving for the person I might have been if this hadn't happened, recognizing that what happened to me wasn't my fault, even though I had internalized so much shame and guilt, that it felt like it was written into my DNA. I started to understand that Susan had manipulated me systematically, using techniques that work on children's developing brains, that the sponsors had exploited my vulnerability, my need for approval, my desire to be special, that I had been a victim, not a participant, that the adults in that situation were responsible, not the child, that I could be angry at my mother, while also understanding she had been manipulated too. This understanding didn't erase the pain. It didn't make everything better, but it shifted something fundamental. It allowed me to start separating who I was from what was done to me, to begin rebuilding an identity that wasn't defined solely by trauma, to imagine a future where I was more than just a victim, more than just a survivor, more than just a collection of broken pieces. Recovery isn't linear. It's messy and complicated and full of contradictions. There are good days and bad days. Days when I felt strong and capable, and like I was actually healing, and days when I couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of what happened crushed me all over again, when I was certain I was broken beyond repair and would never be okay. But slowly, painfully, I started finding my voice. Not the performative voice I had learned in pageants, bright and confident, and saying what people wanted to hear. But my real voice, the one that could say, I'm not okay, and I need help. And this wasn't my fault, and mean it. At 17, I started writing. At first, just for myself, journal entries, processing my memories and emotions, trying to make sense of the chaos in my head. But then I started writing my story, not for publication, just to organize my thoughts, to make sense of what happened, to reclaim my narrative from the court transcripts and news reports that told my story, but didn't capture the reality of living through it. Dr. Martinez encouraged this. She said trauma survivors often heal by finding meaning in their pain, by transforming their experiences into something that could help others. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but the writing helped. It gave me a way to process without having to speak out loud. It let me control the narrative for once. My relationship with my mother slowly, painfully, began to heal. We went to family therapy together. We had conversations that ripped open old wounds so they could heal properly this time. She apologized over and over. I cried and raged and slowly began to forgive. We both grieved for what we lost and what could never be recovered. My childhood, her innocence, our relationship before. Around age 18, I started speaking publicly about what happened to me. It started small, a local support group for survivors, then a bigger event. Then I was asked to speak at a conference. Each time was terrifying, but each time I saw the impact. Survivors telling me I helped them feel less alone, parents thanking me for opening their eyes, professionals learning things they'd never considered. That's when I realized my pain could have purpose, that what was done to me could be transformed into something that helped prevent it from happening to others. That wasn't healing exactly, but it was meaning, and meaning mattered. I am 25 years old now. It has been 11 years since Susan was arrested. I am not completely healed. That would be a lie. I still have bad days. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still struggle with trust and intimacy and feeling safe in my own body. Trauma doesn't disappear. It becomes part of you. But there are good things too. I started a nonprofit organization when I was 22 called Bright Stars Safe Futures. We work with families in child entertainment industries. We educate parents about grooming tactics. We provide warning signs. We offer resources and support. I went back to school and studied psychology. I graduated last year. I have friends now. Real friends who know my story and love me anyway. I'm learning to have healthy relationships. My relationship with my mother is better. Not perfect, but honest. I've learned to love my body again, to feel joy again. Small things that remind me being alive can be good. If you're a survivor reading this, what happened was not your fault. You can survive this. You can build a life worth living. If you're a parent, please listen to your children. Watch for changes. Trust your instincts. Be vigilant. Prioritize safety over success. Susan is still in prison. The investigation saved other children. That matters. I think about the 6-year-old who won her first crown. She deserved better. I can't give her back what was taken, but I can honor her by living, by healing, by speaking up, by making sure what happened matters. This is my story. It's painful and ugly, but it's also a story of survival, resilience, and finding light even in the darkest places. I am Brittany Moore. I am a survivor, and I am still here.